Rain hit the cracked pavement just as Rowan Nash tackled the thief to the ground. 1 second, Rowan was crouched by his rusted sedan, adjusting the straps on his daughter's backpack. The next, he heard heels screech and a woman's voice shout, "Hey, stop him!" A blur of movement, black hoodie, running fast, and a red purse yanked from a woman's shoulder. Rowan didn't think, he just ran. His boots slammed into the wet sidewalk as he caught up to the guy mid-20s, wiry, desperate. The thief barely had time to turn when Rowan slammed him down, pinning his arm behind his back. "Drop it," Rowan growled, his voice low and firm. The purse hit the sidewalk with a thud. The thief cursed under his breath and tried to wriggle free, but Rowan held him down until a security guard rushed over. "Sir, whoa, okay, I've got it from here," the guard panted, grabbing the thief by the arms. Rowan stood, breathing hard, soaked from the rain. He looked up. And froze. The woman standing 5 feet away was not who he'd expected. She wasn't crying or panicked. She looked furious and expensive. Her trench coat was cream-colored, definitely designer and soaked through, but it clung perfectly to her tall frame. Her heels, probably worth more than his car, clicked as she stormed toward the purse. Her dark red hair clung to her cheeks, and she shoved it back, snapping at the guard, "Make sure he's arrested. Press charges." Then her gaze landed on Rowan. "You tackled him?" she asked, her voice sharp but curious. Rowan nodded. "Yeah, he was fast." "You didn't have to do that. He could have had a weapon." He shrugged. "I've seen worse." She blinked, then frowned. "Are you hurt?" "No, just wet." A small figure peeked out from behind Rowan's legs. "Daddy, is that lady okay?" Rowan turned. "Yeah, Z, she's okay." The little girl looked up at the woman with wide eyes, her curly hair a frizzy halo from the rain. "You dropped your purse." The woman's eyes softened just a little. She knelt down and gave the girl a small smile. "Thanks, sweetheart, I'm Rachel Kensington." "I'm Zia," she said. "I'm 5. Rachel glanced up at Rowan. "She's adorable." "Thanks," Rowan said, suddenly awkward. "We were heading into the library." Rachel looked confused. "You tackled a mugger with your kid here." Rowan sighed. "I don't always make the smartest calls, but I wasn't going to let him get away." Rachel stood, brushing her wet hair back again. "Well, thank you, really." She reached into her purse and pulled out a crisp bill. "Please, let me give you something." Rowan stepped back. "No, didn't do it for money." She tilted her head. "You're soaking wet, your kid's soaking wet, you're wearing a shirt with holes in it. Still not taking your money." Rachel stared at him like he was an alien. "You'd really say no to a reward?" "I've got a daughter watching. If I start putting a price tag on doing the right thing, what's that teach her?" There was a pause. Then, to his shock, Rachel laughed, not a polite little chuckle, a real laugh. "Okay," she said. "Fair enough." Rowan nodded. "We should go. She's got story time." Rachel watched them walk away, her eyes lingering on the little girl, her tiny rain boots splashing in puddles. Rowan didn't look back. 2 days later, Rowan nearly dropped the mug he was washing when someone knocked on the door. Zia was coloring at the kitchen table. "Daddy, someone's here." "Yes, got it." Rowan dried his hands and opened the door. Rachel Kensington stood there, holding a paper bag and wearing a dry, expensive-looking coat. He blinked. Hi." "I brought dinner," she said simply, holding out the bag. "You said no to money. Figured you couldn't say no to food, and I owe you." "You tracked me down." "You dropped your library card when you tackled the guy. I returned it. They told me your name." Rowan looked at the bag. He could smell something incredible like butter, garlic, and maybe steak. "Look, I appreciate it, but..." Filet mignon, truffle mashed potatoes, House rolls, you sure you want to say no? Zia peeked around his legs. What's filet mignon? Rachel smiled. Fancy steak. Rowan sighed. Fine, but only because Z's gonna riot if she finds out there's steak involved. They sat at the tiny kitchen table, knees bumping. The apartment was small, really small, but clean. Toys were tucked in a basket, dishes were done, and the air smelled like lavender and lemon. Rachel looked around. You live here alone? Me and Z. No partner. Rowan shook his head. Z's mom left before she turned one, haven't heard from her since. Rachel's expression shifted. She looked at Zia, who was happily chewing on a roll, and then back at Rowan. You're doing a good job. Rowan blinked again, thrown by the way she said it, like she meant it. Thanks, he mumbled. Rachel hesitated, then asked, What do you do? Construction, when there's work. I pick up handyman stuff when I can. And you still tackled a thief for a stranger. He looked at her. You were in trouble. They locked eyes. Something unspoken passed between them. Rachel cleared her throat. So, I wasn't totally honest. I didn't come here just to drop off food. Oh. She reached into her purse again this time, pulling out a crisp white card. I'm hosting a charity gala this Saturday. I'd like you to come, both of you. Rowan stared at it. A gala. It's a fundraiser for kids' literacy programs. You mentioned the library. Figured it might be something you care about. He looked at the card, stunned. You're inviting me to a billionaire party. I'm inviting you because I want to, not because I pity you. He shook his head. I don't have a suit. I'll send one. Z doesn't have anything fancy. I'll send something for her too. Rowan opened his mouth, closed it. Why are you doing this? Rachel's voice was low. Because when someone jumps in front of danger for you, the least you can do is show them they matter. And for the first time in years, Rowan didn't know what to say. Saturday night came fast. The suit fit perfectly. The shoes gleamed like mirrors. Zia twirled in her pale pink dress, giggling. Daddy, I look like a princess. You do, Z, you really do. The driver opened the door outside a massive glass building. Lights, cameras, a red carpet. Rowan stepped out, holding Zia's hand, and instantly felt 100 eyes on him. But then Rachel appeared. She wore a dark blue gown that shimmered like ink. Her hair was swept up. Diamond earrings sparkled against her pale skin. She smiled when she saw them. You clean up nice, she said. Rowan gave a half smile. You don't look too bad yourself. People whispered around them. Cameras flashed, but Rachel didn't care. She held out her hand. And Rowan took it. Rachel's fingers brushed Rowan's as they stepped into the ballroom, the low hum of conversation, and the distant clink of crystal filling the space like music. A towering glass chandelier shimmered above them, casting golden light across polished marble floors and tables laced with black velvet and silver accents. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, etched with ornate molding and warm uplighting that made the entire room glow. Is this real? Rowan muttered under his breath, adjusting the cuff of his tailored jacket. Rachel leaned in slightly. It's just one night. Feels like another planet. Across the room, heads turned. Some guests offered polite nods, others stared more openly. A few tried to mask their confusion. Rachel Kensington never brought dates, and she certainly didn't bring anyone they didn't already know. Zia clung to her father's hand, her eyes bright as she spotted a dessert table taller than she was. Daddy, can I? Rachel bent down before Rowan could respond. Would you like to meet the chef? He makes the best chocolate mousse in all of New York. Zia's mouth fell open. Really? Rachel gave her a knowing look. but only for very brave girls who aren't afraid of big kitchens. Zia glanced at her father, who nodded once. Go ahead, Z, stay close. As Rachel led Zia toward the back hallway, Rowan scanned the room. He didn't miss the way people whispered after them, but he kept his shoulders squared. He wasn't here for their approval. A tall man with silver hair and a navy tux approached. You're the gentleman who helped Miss Kensington the other day. Rowan turned toward him. That's me. The man extended a hand. Daniel Hartford. I sit on the board for the Kensington Foundation. Rowan shook his hand, firm but wary. We've been trying to get Rachel to bring someone to one of these events for years, Daniel said, eyes narrowing slightly. She rarely lets people in. I didn't ask to be here. Daniel gave a thin smile. That's why you are. Enjoy the evening. Before Rowan could respond, Rachel returned. Zia skipped beside her, holding a small cup of mousse like she'd just won the lottery. I told you, Rachel said, brushing a crumb from Zia's cheek. Rowan raised an eyebrow. You bribed her with chocolate. She negotiated. I respect that. They made their way toward the main table, and a young woman in a headset approached Rachel, speaking quickly. Rachel's attention sharpened. She nodded once, then turned to Rowan. I need to step away for a few minutes. A donor's having a meltdown about our literacy budget. Will you be all right here? Rowan looked down at his daughter, then back at her. We'll be fine. Rachel hesitated. There's a woman in red by the bar that's Anjali, my assistant. If anything happens, she'll help. Then she disappeared into the crowd, heels silent against the floor. Rowan sat with Zia, watching the servers glide by with trays of hors d'oeuvres he couldn't pronounce. The longer they sat, the more he noticed the subtle shifts, how people kept their distance, how they glanced at him with polite confusion. A woman near the center table leaned toward her friend. He's with her. She must be losing touch. Rowan heard it. He didn't flinch. Zia tugged on his sleeve. Are we allowed to dance? He looked toward the small orchestra warming up near the far side of the room. I don't know the rules here, kiddo. She leaned toward him, whispering, Can we pretend? He stood, offered his hand, and led her to the floor as the first notes of a waltz filled the room. The crowd watched. Some smiled, some didn't, but none of it mattered when Zia laughed. Rachel returned just as the song ended. She paused at the edge of the floor, watching Rowan bow dramatically to his daughter, who curtsied like she'd seen it in a movie. When he turned and caught Rachel's expression, it was unreadable. You're a better dancer than most of the men here, she said. I had a good partner. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Come with me. Rowan followed her through a narrow hallway that led to a private terrace. The city stretched in every direction, lights glittering like stars fallen to earth. The wind was cool but not biting, and for the first time that night, it was quiet. I hate those rooms, she said, wrapping her arms around herself. You built them. I built the charity. The rest of it came with the name. He leaned on the railing beside her. You said you wanted me here because I mattered. Did you mean that? Her jaw tightened. Yes. Then why do you look like you regret it? I don't, she turned toward him, but I didn't expect you to fit in so easily. Rowan gave a short laugh. I don't fit in. You danced with your daughter in front of 200 people who think vulnerability is a weakness. That's power, Rowan. He fell silent, unsure how to respond. She glanced at him, then looked away. I spent years learning how to not need anyone. Why? Because needing people makes you weak. That's what my father believed, and most of the time he was right. Rowan studied her face. You believe that too? I used to. He stepped closer. What changed? She met his eyes. You tackled a thief and then told me no, twice. No one tells me no. He didn't smile. You're not used to people who don't need your money. I'm not used to people who don't want anything from me. They stood there, the wind moving between them, something unsaid hanging in the space. You don't scare me, Rachel. You should. I've faced worse than you. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. I'm not offering you a fairy tale, Rowan. He stepped closer, his voice low. Good, I don't need one. Inside, the music swelled. The city pulsed below. And for the first time in years, Rachel Kensington leaned into someone not for appearances or politics or power, but because she wanted to. Rowan stood on the sidewalk outside her penthouse building, Zia's small hand in his. The doorman had already offered them umbrellas twice, but Rowan had waved him off. The rain had lightened, barely a mist now, and Zia was busy tracing shapes in the fog on the glass door. Rachel stepped out a moment later, her coat already on. Not the cream one from before. This one was darker, sleeker, and nothing about her tonight suggested she belonged anywhere but on a magazine cover. She didn't comment on the rain or the late hour. Instead, she looked directly at Rowan, her expression unreadable. You said you're off work this week, she said. He nodded. Zia's on fall break. Figured I'd line up some repairs at the building. Our plumbing's been screeching like a banshee. I have a proposal. I'm listening. I need a contractor for a property in Hudson Valley. It's a vineyard that's been in my family for generations. I want to turn the main house into a retreat for foster kids during the summer, but it's falling apart. Rowan blinked. How far gone? Original plumbing, rotting wood frames, missing roof tiles. The foundation's solid, but the house hasn't been touched in 20 years. And you want me to fix it. I want someone I trust, and who doesn't lie to my face. Zia tugged Rowan's arm. Will there be grapes? Rachel crouched to her level. Rows and rows of them, but they are not for eating unless you like sour peels. Zia giggled. That sounds gross. Rachel stood again. You'd stay on the property. There's a guest house. It's modest but clean. I'll have groceries delivered. You won't pay for anything. Rowan hesitated. Zia's school. There's a small academy nearby. I already called. They're taking seasonal transfers. She can start Monday. You already called. I don't guess. He looked down at Zia, then back at her. How long would this take? 6 weeks, maybe 7. You'd oversee the full renovation. I'll cover materials, you set your rate. I don't want charity. This isn't charity. It's employment. If I wanted to give you money, I'd write a check and be done. But I want this done right, and I want it done by someone who understands what kids like Zia need. Rowan met her eyes. And what do you think I need? Rachel didn't blink. A place to breathe. He looked away, jaw tight. I'll think about it. Good, because already told the school you'd be enrolling her. You're pushy. You're stubborn. It's a miracle we haven't combusted yet. Zia yawned, leaning against Rowan's side. Rachel opened the car door. I'll have a driver pick you up Friday morning. Pack light. Rowan didn't answer right away, but he didn't argue either. 3 days later, they drove through winding roads flanked by gold and rust-colored trees. The air smelled like pine and distant smoke. The vineyard stretched for acres, rows of vines lined up like soldiers, the house at the center with faded shutters, and a wraparound porch that sagged slightly on one side. Zia pressed her face to the window. It's huge. The guest house was smaller, tucked behind a row of old magnolia trees. Inside, it was warm and simple 2 bedrooms, a wood burning stove, and quilted curtains that fluttered in the breeze. A welcome basket sat on the table with a note in Rachel's handwriting. No cell service. Enjoy the silence. It took Rowan 2 days to survey the damage. By the third, he had a whiteboard covered in sketches and a dozen delivery trucks scheduled for the week. Zia spent her mornings at the tiny academy and her afternoons drawing chalk castles in the driveway. Rachel arrived the following Saturday, unannounced, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a bag of warm cinnamon bread from a local bakery. "I figured you'd be up early," she said, setting the bag on the porch rail. Rowan leaned against the post, hands wrapped around his mug. "You always show up with food. You seem to forget to feed yourself when you're working, and you burn toast." "I didn't know you noticed." "I notice everything." He took a bite of the bread, then looked up. "You bought this place." "My grandfather left it to me. He used to bring me here every summer. Said it was the only place in the world where people stopped pretending." "Sounds like you were close." "I was 7 when he died. After that, no one came back. My father hated it here." "Then why keep it?" "Because it's mine, and because maybe someone else can find what I lost." Rowan studied her. "You ever think about kids?" Rachel's mouth twisted, not in a smile. "I used to think I wasn't built for that. Too much damage, too many walls." "You're good with Zia." "She's different. She doesn't expect anything." "She expects everything." He tilted his head. "She just doesn't know it yet." Rachel looked down at her shoes. "I don't want her to expect me." "Why?" "Because I'm not permanent." "Then why are you still here?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked into the house and started peeling wallpaper from the parlor wall like she'd done it 100 times. Rowan followed without a word. Days turned to weeks. The house transformed, beams replaced, paint freshened. The kitchen gutted and rebuilt from the floor up. Rachel came often, sometimes just to watch, sometimes to work beside him. They argued over tile colors and laughed about electrical codes. She taught Zia to play chess. He caught her humming once, barefoot in the hallway, hands covered in plaster. One night, after Zia had gone to sleep and the last of the floorboards had been sanded, Rowan found Rachel sitting on the front steps, wrapped in a blanket. He sat beside her. "You're quiet." "It's been a long time since stayed in one place this long." "You planning to leave?" She pulled the blanket tighter. "I don't know. Maybe I'm waiting for someone to ask me to stay." He didn't move. "I'm not gonna beg." "I wouldn't respect you if you did." "I wouldn't mean it if I didn't." She turned to him slowly, face shadowed in the moonlight. "What would you mean?" "That I want you here, but not for Zia, and not because you feel guilty, only if you want to be." Her voice dropped. "And what if I'm scared?" "Then we figure it out anyway." Rachel stared at him for a long time. Then she reached over, her hand settling over his, fingers lacing through his without hesitation. Neither of them spoke again that night. But something shifted, and neither of them let go. The house was finished. The last coat of paint had dried, the windows gleamed in the morning light, and the silence that followed completion felt heavier than the hammering and sawing that had filled the air for weeks. The retreat looked nothing like it had when they arrived. No more splintered railings or warped floors. Now, it looked alive again. Ready. Rachel stood at the top of the porch steps, her arms folded as she watched a moving truck roll down the gravel path, loaded with bookshelves, art supplies, and furniture for the dormitory wing. Rowan stood beside her, his tool belt slung over his shoulder, hair tousled from the wind. "They'll be ready by summer," she said. "We'll take 10 kids at a time, rotate them every 2 weeks." Rowan nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the rows of vines stretching into the horizon. "You're really doing it." "I don't start things I don't finish." "You used to." She turned to him. "No, used to avoid starting anything that mattered." He didn't answer right away. The air between them had been different lately, full of things unsaid, decisions looming. "I've been offered a contract," he said finally. "A builder in Albany, longer term, good pay, Zia could stay in school full-time." Rachel didn't move. "Are you taking it?" "I haven't said yes." She waited. "The work's steady, and it's not tied to anyone else's plans." "I see." "But it's not here," he added, "and I don't know what this is yet, us." She faced him fully. "You want a label now?" "I want to know if this ends the moment I drive away." Her voice softened. "I don't want it to." "Then say it." She stepped closer, her heels crunching the gravel. "You said once you wouldn't beg. I'm not asking you to, but I am asking you not to walk away before we figure out what this could be." He exhaled. "Zia's settled. She's happy. She's never had this much stability. Can't yank that away for something that isn't sure." Rachel's eyes flicked toward the guest house. "Then don't." He frowned. "What does that mean?" She took a breath. "Stay, both of you. The retreat needs a caretaker. Someone who understands how to build more than walls. You'd have a home, a job, not under me, alongside me." "You're offering a job to keep me close." "I'm offering a life, one we build together." Rowan didn't speak. The wind moved through the vines, carrying the scent of sun-warmed earth. "I didn't think you'd ask," he said finally, "but I hoped." "I don't do hope," she replied, quieter now. "Not until you." He stepped forward slowly, until there was nothing between them but air. Then he kissed her, deliberate, sure, like he was sealing something that had been waiting too long. When they pulled apart, she didn't speak. She just reached for his hand and laced her fingers through his, not with hesitation, but with certainty. Later that evening, under a sky streaked with violet and gold, Zia ran barefoot through the grass, a paper crown perched crookedly on her head. Rachel sat on the porch swing, one leg tucked beneath her, watching as Rowan grilled dinner over a charcoal pit he'd built from leftover stone. "I want to live here forever," Zia declared, spinning in place. Rowan looked over his shoulder. "We'll see how you feel about grapevines in winter." She giggled. "Do they get snow hats?" Rachel stood, brushing her hands on her jeans. "Come here, little monarch, time to wash up." As Zia ran to her, Rachel caught her mid-spin and lifted her into her arms with surprising ease. "You, young lady, are going to need a royal bath." Zia wrapped her arms around Rachel's neck. "Can we make popcorn after?" "Only if you agree to brush your hair without complaints." "I'll think about it." Rachel laughed, a sound Rowan hadn't heard before, not like this. It was full, unguarded. She caught his eye across the yard, and he saw it again, not just joy, but belonging. That night, after Zia had fallen asleep curled up beneath a quilt made by local volunteers, Rowan and Rachel sat on the porch together. The stars were bright, the kind only visible far from city lights. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I've spent so long guarding everything I built, my company, my reputation, my name. And now, I want to build something I don't feel the need to protect." He brushed his thumb along the back of her hand. "You already did." "I want more." He looked at her. "What does more look like?" "A wedding in the orchard," she said softly. "Zia dropping flower petals in boots, you in that ridiculous suit you wore to the gala. And you. In white, but barefoot." He smiled. "That sounds about right." She turned to him. "Then say yes." He didn't hesitate. "Yes." The ceremony came weeks later, under an arch of twisted branches and blossoms. The vineyard was blooming, sun-drenched and alive. The retreat hadn't opened yet, but the house was full of neighbors, friends, and people whose names Rachel had once only known from donation lists. Zia wore a flower crown and carried a basket of petals, which she tossed with theatrical flair. Rowan stood beneath the arch in a simple black suit, his tie slightly crooked. Rachel walked toward him, barefoot as promised, her dress floating around her like wind over water. When she reached him, she didn't wait for the efficient. I used to think people were currency, that love was leverage, but you taught me that real love doesn't cost anything, it gives everything. Rowan took her hands in his. You gave us a home, but more than that, you gave me a reason to believe again, and I'm not letting that go. Zia clapped before the kiss even happened. Later that night, as music played and fireflies lit the edges of the vineyard, Rachel danced with her new husband while Zia twirled with a group of kids from the nearby school. The stars above were endless. The laughter was real. And when Rachel looked at the man she'd once called a stranger, she knew. This was the life she didn't know she wanted. And now, she'd never live without it again. Rain pattered lightly on the greenhouse roof as Rachel walked barefoot across the moss-lined floor, a sketchpad tucked beneath her arm. Outside, the vines were just beginning to bud again, their branches trembling in the early spring breeze. Inside, the scent of damp soil mingled with jasmine hanging from the trellises. She found Rowan bent over a wooden workbench, carefully shaping a frame for one of the children's new reading hammocks. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, sawdust clinging to his forearms. His wedding band glinted as he adjusted the clamp. "You've been out here since sunrise," she said, voice low. He glanced up with a crooked smile. Couldn't sleep. The wind kept rattling the back panel loose again. Rachel set her sketchpad down beside the finished pieces. "We should get that fixed before the first group arrives." "We will," he said. "Everything's almost ready." She ran her fingertips over the edge of the hammock frame. "You know, I used to think this place was too quiet. Now it feels like the only place that ever made sense." Rowan brushed off his hands. "Funny, I used to think I needed noise to drown out the hard parts. Turns out I just needed the right kind of quiet." Rachel leaned against the bench. "Zia's been asking if we're keeping the extra room in the guest house." "For what?" She drew a sign for the door. It says, "For when we have more people to love." Rowan blinked, then rubbed the back of his neck. "She's not subtle." "She's 5, subtlety's not in her vocabulary." He chuckled, then grew serious. "You've been sketching more lately." "I think I'm ready to start the next project." He eyed her. "You mean the art center you mentioned?" She nodded. "There's an old barn near the northern edge of the vineyard. Needs a new roof and probably a full wall rebuilt, but the bones are good. I want it to be a place where the kids can create without limits." Rowan wiped his palms on a cloth. "You sure you want to keep expanding? Could just enjoy what's already here." "I'm not wired to sit still, Rowan, but I don't want to build empires anymore. I want to build meaning." He stepped closer, resting a hand on the pad she'd brought. "Then let's do it, together." Rachel looked up at him, her face softening. "You never ask what it'll cost." "I already have everything I need." She reached up, fingers sliding behind his neck to pull him into a kiss that was gentle, unhurried, and full of certainty. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his. "Thank you for not walking away when it got real." "I didn't just fall for you," he whispered. "I fell for who you are when no one's looking." Later that afternoon, they walked hand in hand down the orchard path toward the main house. Zia was on the porch swing, reading aloud to a group of children from the local school. Her voice carried through the breeze, confident and bright. A volunteer waved from the kitchen window. Someone was baking again, judging by the scent of cinnamon drifting through the air. The retreat had already begun its quiet transformation into something permanent. Rachel squeezed Rowan's hand. "We should invite your sister and her boys. Zia's been asking." "They'll visit once school ends. She's counting down the days." A child burst into laughter nearby, and a soccer ball rolled past them. Rowan bent to scoop it up and tossed it back without missing a beat. Rachel watched him, her heart full. "You know," she murmured, "I thought having everything meant being untouchable, but I was wrong." He looked at her. "What does it mean now?" "It means having someone who sees you at your worst and stays. It means building a life that doesn't need approval to be worthwhile." He pulled her close, arms wrapping around her waist. "It means waking up beside the woman who turned my world right side up." She buried her face in his chest. "You still make everything feel possible. And you made me believe in forever." That night, the retreats team hosted a small bonfire for the kids. Marshmallows melted into chocolate, firelight danced on every face, and Rachel found herself sitting with Zia curled in her lap, Rowan's arm around her shoulders. The stars blinked above them, clear and close. One of the teens asked if she'd always wanted to run a place like this. Rachel smiled. "No, I didn't know I was allowed to want something this good." The teen nodded, then leaned back to watch the sparks rise toward the sky. As the fire burned low and the children began to drift off to their rooms, Rowan whispered, "She's happy." Rachel kissed the top of Zia's head. "She's home." So were they. Years passed like seasons, slow, full, and rich with purpose. The vineyard bloomed, the retreat expanded, and the art center came alive with color and laughter. Zia grew tall, fearless, and full of dreams she voiced with certainty. The guest house became a home layered with memories, from first steps to late-night dancing in the kitchen. Rachel never returned to the city full-time. She didn't need to. Her legacy no longer lived in skyscrapers or gala headlines, but in the lives she helped shape every day. She gave speeches when invited, consulted when needed, and always made it back in time for dinner. Rowan built more than structures now. He built trust, safety, and joy in every corner of the retreat. He taught the kids how to use hammers, how to fix what's broken, how to believe in second chances. One spring morning, as they walked the orchard path with coffee in hand, Rachel paused beneath the largest tree. "Let's build our next forever here," she said, her voice full of certainty. Rowan raised an eyebrow. "You thinking bigger?" "A new house for us, a real home, one Zia can bring her own kids to someday." Rowan grinned. "Then let's start sketching." They kissed beneath the blossoms, laughter echoing through the trees as the wind carried the scent of wildflowers around them. And so they built again. Not for the world, but for love, for family, for forever.